I'm Martin Wallace.
I'm Darren McCarthy.
I'm Dan Fury.
And this is the Fundamentals. I feel seasoned, professional, in my element. Not so sure about this subject.
Thanks a lot for that.
Yeah.
Really,
So,
really branching out here.
yeah.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about trepanation.
Trepanning.
Trepanning, yeah.
If you've been trepanned, you probably know about it. Not something that slips your mind.
It might slip out a hole, you know?
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
Gets close to the mind.
It's close, yeah.
So, briefly, I guess, trepanning, or trepan is also, could be a noun, it could be an instrument or a tool, is making an incision and removing, well, I guess material at its basic level. So it's boring out a hole. In most cases, and I think certainly in our case, it's the boring out of a hole and removing a material, basically making a hole in the skull.
The skull seems like one of the least likely places you would want to get a hole put into.
If you're going to give up some bone, you don't want it to give up that
Please don't go
bone
to my skull.
there, yeah.
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 I guess we should start off, so we do have a guest. And we also, this is kind of the source material for our subject this week.
Yeah. First guest.
First guest.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Great to be
Yeah, you should maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dave. Dave Carrico.
Hi,
Barstock Dave. I heard about the show. Was just chatting with Darren at work.
We
and
work together.
We work together.
I'm the only one that you work with here.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
You know
true.
my name.
So we were, yeah. And I don't know why, but I just went, oh, well, what about trepanation? I don't know a lot about trepanation, so I'm excited to be here and learn more. I saw an article in Spin magazine. So there was text on one side and then a picture, full-page picture of a fella's x-ray of his skull. So you could see his skull and you could see this hole in the top of his head. I recall the writer saying that she was feeling around on his skull and it's like she could get her finger in there like getting it in a bowling ball.
Ooh.
Yeah. And there were the stills from Miss Fielding's, Amanda Fielding. There were stills from her movie and all these people relating positive experiences from having a hole in their head.
Sounds unlikely to me, but
And there's, I've had my issues with depression, and I thought for an instant.
Please tell me you did it, and you've been saving it. Please tell me you just wanted to make an admission.
I've saved this, and I'm gonna do it tonight. Yeah. I'm gonna do it right here.
An in-house
Coming out.
trepanning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I came to learn about trepanation, and it goes way back.
It sure does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was excited to learn about it because it's something you see a lot of like Renaissance style paintings
Yeah.
of the
Oh, yeah.
activity, but I never knew what it was called, like how to look into it, or it just looks like medieval surgery.
And I think too, if you saw one of the there are several medieval or Renaissance drawings or paintings that this would be depicted. If you didn't know what it was, it would be they're torturing that person, or like there's not, it's not like a immediate
yeah, it is.
situation.
voluntary.
It's barbaric. There's apparati for it. Those look way brutal than.
Yeah, it doesn't
think-
look like a surgery
Yeah.
at first glance.
Yeah.
But it is regarded as one of, if not the oldest surgical procedures in human history.
Accounts of it going back about 7,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Widely used. They found evidence for it on every continent except for Antarctica, and anywhere people have been.
Yeah. So
There's
cultures that
evidence for
haven't really touched each other or influenced each other directly. So it's a cross-cultural medical procedure, or
Quasi-medical.
well,
in this day and age, I guess.
I think that was the thing that having to divorce myself from my understanding of medicine, treatment, cleanliness and an operating. There were some videos available, and
have you seen videos?
oh my god, I was kind of probably catching like 1 out of 5 frames. Just watching, and then having to like rub my eyes and pull on the skin of my face. There's anything to like not think about my skull. Just had like a real headache kind of going, which would probably be cured by trepanation, someone would say.
So how far back do we have the first evidence of this?
Skulls in Peru, there would be these mass graves, 160 people, and 40% of them are trepanned.
What they see from the evidence of it is that sometimes the hole would be there, and it didn't start to grow back. So they knew they died in the operation or shortly after. But almost 90% of them in certain cultures had several holes in the head. And you can see the brain starting to recalcify and grow itself back.
Skull.
Or
yeah,
the skull.
Wow.
Or the bone is what I meant to say. Not the brain.
The brain bone.
Yeah, the brain bone. And so that's evidence of them living post the procedure. So when we first discovered it, we were fairly certain it was just a thing that happened after death. It's like a post-mortem kind of. But then we found more and more evidence of growth after the procedure and multiple surgeries done.
And the further back you go in history, they're not as successful statistically, but then as time goes on, it goes from like maybe like 25-30% people live to 60%. I mean, just within a millennia, it's like way. And then even in the last century, in the 1900s, there are tribesmen and bushmen in Africa with a 96% survival rate. And I'm telling you, like this is one of the videos that I watched that you're watching this and you're thinking, or I thought, there is zero chance that you survive.
Yeah.
This is the one you're telling me about today with
they're using like old tin cans to like peel back the scalp. I mean, it's not like it's, even a knife necessarily.
And they don't close the wound. They leave it wide open to the sky.
And people live.
The brain
There's
is
a
left
membrane
exposed.
that grows over. But if you don't wear a hat or a head wrap, like your brain could get sunburned.
Your brain gets sunburned.
That's not a typical worry.
No.
It's not.
Can you like reverb on that? The brain could be sunburned.
Wow.
That's
Drama.
Some studio tricks.
Yeah. It seems to be now mostly English people that trepan
artists.
themselves. I don't know. That's my my little experience with it. But they take care to stitch the hole back up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But these guys in Africa don't. They just rip it wide open.
We'll
And
just
It takes
hang
like
out.
3 hours to get it done. The person who's having it done sits there.
Yeah.
And it's eerie. They wash the wound out as they're going. They just pour water on top of it, and that kind of made me shudder.
It's getting down in the brain cavity.
Oh, like this is like because what they're doing then they're just kind of using like stone tools to more or less just chisel out a hole in the skull. They don't have a drill bit or any kind of crankshaft mechanism, anything like that. So they're just shaving it out. Takes a long time, and then has
I think something it's like 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
I think if it's just a slow
They're
process.
probably incredibly efficient at it now. You imagine going back, that probably took forever.
Yeah.
There was something about watching it that the patient was serene and calm the whole time. And this is without anesthetic. And I'm pretty good with gore, violence, death. I've been really desensitized by the internet. These kinds of things don't bother me. But there was something about watching these videos where they're incredibly peaceful while something really painful is happening.
Yeah.
That just made me shudder, like thinking about it being done to me.
Yeah.
It's like I watch somebody get hit by a train and it's gory and it's awful, but it's over. But watching like this long procedure of somebody just with like this dead eye stare.
Well, it's super intentional. Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah,
There's
it's
just
not an
something about
accident.
it.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. I think it's way easier for me to wrap my mind around like, oh yeah, you had a terrible accident. You get hit by a truck or a train or something, and that's terrible. Mm-hmm. This is like everyone get together. Like and
it's a ceremony.
It's a ceremony.
Big ceremony.
It's everyone your village and your family.
It's a rite of passage for young men.
Is it?
In some cases?
I think
cultures?
there's an idea that might have been. A lot of the reasoning behind it, we are really just speculating.
From the medieval times, I think the idea that latched on or that passed down through history is that it was a religious ceremony to like release demons or let in God.
And people with mental illness too, they thought that's
Yeah.
what was happening is they had demons in their head, and that was a hole to let them fly out.
Religious aspect, what I found was kind of secondary to the idea of something's wrong with you, and it's more of a medical treatment. It's not about the bad spirits or anything. It's you have headaches. You have headaches all the time.
Yeah, so it seems to me like in
Get them out of there.
Yeah, medieval times, it was very much more spiritual or almost superstitious ceremonial procedure. But before that, the Romans did it entirely for medical purposes, which I think is kind of interesting that it flipped on its head like that. But there's writings about the procedure, why you would do it.
The Hindu goddess Shiva is said to be trepanned. It's like the third eye
Oh.
Something I came across. It kind of makes sense. You see a lot of photos of skulls that have been trepanned, and it looks like
centered
the
there.
center of the
Is
forehead.
it mostly there?
It seems like it's on the forehead, but then it'll almost always miss
Like the temporal
the
lobe.
temporal lobe or like any of the major muscular or
It's
like,
tougher to cut in. There's a much higher chance of bleeding
out and everything. So
at some point they learned how to do that pretty
I bet
pretty
they took
early
a few
on.
tries.
Up here, it's actually gory, but it's not nearly as bad as cutting one of these major muscle groups.
yeah.
So there's really not a whole lot going on up here. You got the scalp, but
And plus, you have the plates. There's
the plates are
already
fused.
some-
yeah,
And that's a weak spot there
Yeah.
where it's fused.
Yeah.
And that's something that proponents of trepanation come back to is when we're born, the skull is not sealed shut. So the plates of the skull are still mobile. Then as we age, they fuse together, and the theory is that they constrict the blood flow to the brain. So the idea of puncturing this is you're expanding the blood flow ability of your brain, getting back to a state of the development of your brain as a child. I saw this one video of a guy, William Lundy, I think his name was.
Lund. Is this the guy who was mugged?
Yeah, he's mugged and hit in the head.
Yeah, Bobby Lund.
Bobby Lund, that's it. Yeah, and he was talking about, that was one of his big things, was like, kids they have more fun. They're more imaginative, and
He's a really interesting guy because a lot of the other modern day people, they're under the idea of its benefits from at least a somewhat hashed out medical reasoning.
yeah.
This guy did not do it to himself. He was mugged and beaten and given a hole in his head. And he's become a proponent of the idea ever since because of how he's felt afterwards. So he's kind of an interesting case for the positive benefits because he isn't one of these radical supporters. It happened to him in an unfortunate accident, and he's been happy about it ever since.
He's felt a change in his mind chemistry.
You get
Like a natural high.
you get this natural high. You feel significantly less fatigued all the time. You feel just a higher state of wonder, creativity, general happiness.
Yeah, that was the thing that I got mostly from that interview years ago is that everyone felt better and a certain sense of relief.
Amanda Fielding references this. It's like a natural LSD. It's not, but there's your capacity for experiencing the effects of a drug. Like, so I guess we should backtrack. So in medieval time or pre-medieval time, monks would be the ones, or spiritual people would be the ones to have this done. And then, you even see the depictions of monks that have like the shaved head. I forget what that's called. There's a specific word for that. But like the monk has that shaved. That's kind of a reference to the times when monks would actually be trepanned. And the idea is that these spiritual people would be ingesting some sort of some drug that would make them hallucinate. Like mushrooms or something. And having been trepanned would lessen the effects of coming down, so they could kind of experience the high more intensely for longer without as many drawbacks when they come back down. Like their brain was able to deal with and cope with these effects. So Amanda Fielding is saying that this is almost a natural high. It's a part of the function of this is keeping you in a state between hallucination and just kind of reality of daily life as we know it. So this is like a way to bridge that gap and keep it ongoing at some level all the time.
I think the spirituality aspect of it is really interesting because you imagine that it being like primitive cultures and such a brutal procedure that it was done to like the poorer socioeconomic class almost as like an experimental kind of thing. But in all kinds of cultures you go back and it was the enlightened ruling class that had it. Like the Incas, it was their spiritual leaders that all got trepanned. And then you had, your working class people that were not. Aztecs were like that too. But yeah, we had we first discovered a specimen of a trepanned skull in 1685, which I think is kind of interesting because it's not really that far away from when it was commonly used. But this is when we first started to get evidence of how long it had been happening, because you have something in their culture that they don't really have the history of. It's just something everybody has done or passed down. And that was pretty much the thought for a long time, that it was like really barbaric and a primitive
that would be a lot more understandable to me from a historical standpoint, that they had this idea that if we get a hole in your head, then we can get all this bad stuff out and let the good stuff in. It does not make much sense to me that this would happen within the last few hundred years.
Within the last 50 years.
And especially,
40, I mean,
especially more.
Well, and there's still primitive cultures on the planet that continue to do it today.
Yeah.
It was Bart Hughes, who is the most fascinating librarian I've ever read about. So he was a Dutch librarian. He was born in 1934. He gets commonly called as a savant by his followers, but I found really nothing to back that up other than the fact that for being a librarian, he's an incredibly smart man. For being a librarian. So he attended medical school in Amsterdam. And it's kind of funny because it was in the 60s, and he was refused his medical degree because of his advocacy of marijuana, which seems really funny to me because I don't really know the history of their support of marijuana, but they sure seem to be into it now.
Pretty into it.
So of all places in the
Plus,
world,
he did the
like,
work, right? Yeah, he did the work. So.
Yeah, he passed. He was, as far as anyone's concerned, a doctor, but he never actually got his degree.
I thought he got his degree, but never got to practice or something. He was kind of held.
Yeah, he couldn't get a job.
Yeah, you're a doctor, but why don't you go to
Got his degree, but he couldn't get a license.
Yeah, he couldn't get a license to practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he became a librarian, but from what I can tell, more or less just because he loved to read all the time. It was just an excuse for him to read. But he was really, really into getting stoned and just trying to reach levels of enlightenment that way. And he kind of came up with this idea that your level of consciousness is directly related to the amount of blood being able to circulate through your brain. So he would do these funny things, like he would stand on his head for as long as he could, try and get as much blood into his brain, and see what that did. He eventually started looking into the idea of trepanning. He was under the impression that it goes back to the youth thing, the childhood, that your brain seals sometime between 8 and 22. It begins to seal up, typically towards later in the teens. But he thought that it was an evolutionary defect of the human being, just sort of a con of the fact that we get to walk upright, that the blood in our brains took the path of least resistance with gravity. And once our skulls sealed up, we didn't get the same amount of, it's a spinal fluid, cranial something.
Yeah. Essentially, so the blood is bringing oxygen to your brain, and then there's the spinal fluid that is flushing toxins out of your brain. The idea is you're rejuvenating the brain with blood, but you're also keeping it clean and...
Cerebrospinal fluid. Yeah. Or CSF.
Yeah. If you guys want to shorten it.
Yeah. And he had this, it's called brain blood volume, was his idea. It was that as an adult, it just wasn't working correctly anymore. So he believed that by trepanning, it sort of reset the system to be like it worked when you were a kid. And he tried for a long time to get a surgeon to do this to him willingly. And everybody thought he was nuts.
I want to say, I mean, it makes logical, rational sense to me that the more blood flow, more efficient blood flow you have to your brain, and then this spinal fluid that's meant to help, the more in balance that is, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But man, what a limb to go out on.
Yeah.
On a little bit of an assumption.
Kind of an
there.
assumption about evolution.
And also a guy who's been taking a lot of acid.
Like so much acid.
Like really.
Oh, he did that too.
Was,
he was
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
fan of the weed and the LSD.
Yeah, he wanted to just change consciousness all the time. Well, it turns out that acid does exactly this for a short period of time. Mushrooms will do it too. Even weed does to a little bit of an extent. And he thought that's why you got high. And he couldn't find anybody to do it to him. So he did it to himself.
Ooh.
What year was this? This was
65, yeah.
Wow.
The 6th of January of 1965. He took a Black & Decker electric drill.
Known for quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just drilled a hole in his skull.
Wow.
Shit.
And then he just went around publicly and suggested that it was the cure for everything.
Well, now, if you're doing it to yourself, obviously you only want to puncture the skull, not the brain.
You don't want a heavy hand.
So there's actually a fairly large membrane sac
Yeah.
that protects your brain inside of the skull that can be damaged without anything. There's no nerves in there, so you don't even feel it.
Yeah.
But what you do is you don't drill through the skull into it. You kind of make little holes until you can peel it out. So you're not. I mean, you're going to get through
You're
it. But,
perforating a little bit.
yeah, you don't just take and just go down until because you can't even feel anything.
Right.
So it would be really, really easy to just go too far.
Yeah, that's
Like really easy.
super easy.
I guess we should also say that.
Yeah.
Millimeters,
Yeah.
thousandths of an inch.
And
There's a membrane.
regardless of the actual effects of trepanation, don't do this to yourself.
Please don't.
If this turns out to be
If you're
the
under
best,
18, don't fucking trepanate yourself.
if this turns out to even be like the cure for everything, the best thing ever, still don't do it to yourself.
No.
Don't do it.
Not a good idea.
Well, Bart did.
Bart did, and
Wow.
survived.
Yeah.
Well, there's a place in Monterey that'll do it for $2,400.
What?
Or this was at least as of.
That's got to be fairly recent.
I was looking up Bobby Lund real quick here. This story is from April 4th, 2006. There's the International Trepanation Advocacy Group.
Yeah, trepan.com.
ITAG. Yeah. Monterey, Mexico. So you can go to Mexico and have it done for
Oh, that makes sense.
$2,400, $2,006. So
By Bobby Lund. No.
No, not bad. That's kind of interesting because that whole organization is run by a guy named Peter Halverson.
Yeah, and what a weird website. Did you feel like I didn't feel like I got a sense really of like all the archive and category things on the website didn't seem to have.
Yeah, so this
Is it still going on? Is that
it is. So their whole story is that
ITAG? ITAG?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're the organization that's trying to make it an accepted medical, almost like plastic surgery. What they want is for anybody who wants to do it can get it done for a price. And I fully support that. I think that people are going to be crazy if they get into it and do it to themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So I think that, I mean, you do all kinds of weird stuff to your body. You might as, at this point, to me, it's just like body modification. It's just like getting,
Yeah.
people cut their noses off and stuff.
I would say that
It's a perfectly
Or they go to
safe
TGI
procedure.
Fridays and get their nose cut off.
yeah. That's definitely something. Going to a doctor or a hospital setting and having a licensed surgeon saying like, yeah, this is totally fine. You're gonna be fine. We got this.
We don't believe that it's going to do what you think it's going to do to you, but
But you're not gonna die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not even going to be damaged.
Yeah. It's
That's
like
pretty much what happened with Lund. He, his skull was damaged. The doctors just removed those
Pulled a
pieces
shard.
and didn't put anything back because there's no physiological
reason.
necessity. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got to think for as long as human beings have been doing it, the only thing that was ever dangerous about it was, unclean surgery.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the practice.
Right.
It was just the fact that
Yeah.
they were doing it with rocks.
Well, and that's. I think that's the thing is
Sharpened obsidian and stuff.
Ah.
is,
Found it on the ground.
That was kind of the creepy thing to
That'll
me.
do it.
Was the people doing it to themselves, and people doing it without people throughout history who were operating at all. I guess I think the fact that it's like you're removing part of the skull for whatever reason, it gives me like it gives me like the shivers a little bit. But it would be the same thing if it was 1000 BC and you got attacked by a shark. Even if you survived,
You're done.
yeah, I mean, you're gonna die. There's not even the concept of bacteria, germs, antiseptic, and so any sort of surgery where people were just like, oh yeah, we have a sharpened rock that we've been using to chop up a dead animal that we kill. I mean, the bacteria that you're gonna get is gonna kill you. But for whatever reason, though, the survival rate of people cutting their neighbor's head open and removing from the skull is really, really good. That's fascinating to me. How does anyone survive this?
I think that looking back into like the history of it really made me just so thankful to be alive now
Yeah.
Yeah.
and not then, because you had all the predators, you had all kinds of terrible stuff. But it's like you hurt yourself, and you're hurt forever.
Yeah.
There's no fix for anything. You don't amputate. You don't have any kind of solution. You just get sick and die.
We talked about this.
And that was a natural occurrence. It was happening to everybody because they're out hunting,
Yeah.
doing dangerous, stupid stuff, trying to get food.
We talked about this during the
Things are already
Trying to
tough.
live.
Yeah.
during the circus episode, talking about it all started with like horseback riding, and it was people doing insane like feats, I guess, of like horsemanship. And if you messed up once, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like where in society you are, what city you're near or not near. If you're in the middle of nowhere, like, you're gonna die.
If you break something, what do? You
Put it back as best you can.
Yeah.
But people survive this all the time.
And so I think now it should be absolutely a thing that if you want to get it done, you should be able to get it done for yourself.
Let's talk about why would you get what actual evidence or reason would you get this done?
Well, the evidence has been fairly minimal.
Yeah.
But that's ITAG's whole situation right
There
now.
hasn't been a robust enough study, hasn't been enough examples.
They're the ones that are putting money into the study. It's nice that they finally found some surgeons who will do it to volunteers just to see.
Well, the headline is Something Missing in Your Life? Try drilling a hole in your head.
Yeah, it sure
That's the
seems to
headline
help.
at...
So their marketing department has been working
On
around the
call,
clock.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yes, they've been doing a bunch of stuff with people since about 2004, where they've taken small groups of volunteers and then studying their MRI tests and that kind of thing. But their whole situation right now is that there actually isn't any possible way to gather any information from the procedures. Like an MRI does not show any difference whatsoever. So they're working right now to devise tests to gather evidence before doing more procedures on people to study the evidence. Because everything that we have right now it just doesn't even show up.
Yeah.
It's like the common thought right now is that Bart was correct in what happens to you after you remove a piece of your skull. It equalizes itself. It makes your brain more like a child again. Everything was right. But the current thought is that actually doesn't do anything because the amount of blood in the brain isn't nearly as important as its flow. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So neuroscience this whole time has been like, yeah, you're right. But your effect is not. Yeah. Yes, that is true. It's happening in children. You can see that. It does return to that state, but it doesn't do anything for you. Yeah. It's all been a placebo effect. But that's what's kind of interesting is it's this radical new procedure that's happening roughly at the same time that transcendental meditation was happening. You know, that whole 60s Enlightenment movement is when this all started. Everybody was just trying to get high, like new enlightenment, new ways of consciousness, that whole era. There's this culture of people that did it to themselves following him, and they all have reported the same benefits. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think Bobby Lund is a really cool example, because he wasn't one of those. But he reported the same things happening to him. It wasn't until he discovered their culture, too, that he was like, oh, well, probably has something to do with the hole in my head.
Right, and he was a career heroin addict. I mean...
I watched just a really short little interview with him, and I'm pretty sure he said he was clean, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, he got lucky to begin with. He survived an attack that removed part of your skull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Brooklyn.
I bet you feel real good.
Yeah. Just surviving a mugging in Brooklyn, you feel like $1 million.
We didn't really talk about Amanda Fielding. Is it Fielding or Fielding?
I was just saying Fielding, but
in German, I think it's Fielding. She's British aristocracy.
Frau Fielding.
Frau Fielding.
Yeah, this is America, bro.
She's British aristocracy, which means she's got some heavy German roots.
Yeah,
those Habsburgs and.
Yeah, she's crazy, huh? Or interesting, colorful.
Interesting.
She's eccentric.
Eccentric, yes.
I don't think she's crazy.
She did some pretty crazy things, though.
She sure did.
She has pet birds, right?
She does, yeah.
You gotta be crazy.
Yeah, you gotta be crazy.
Keeping birds in the house.
Descended from the House of Habsburg, which I love.
Makes her a countess?
I think she is...
Yeah, countess.
Yeah, Countess of Weymouth and March. Weymouth?
I don't know. Those are a grouping of letters that
W-E-I?
W-E-M-Y-S-S.
That combination of letters does not compute.
Wow.
Weymouth?
Countess of Weenus.
Representing. So she's a British artist. She's friends with Mick Jagger, I think. They're good friends. She has
and she has a hole in her head.
Yeah, she has a hole.
More importantly.
And You can find more information about her at her foundation, the Beckley Foundation, which is a charitable trust that promotes a rational, evidence-based approach to global drug policy, initiates, designs, and conducts pioneering neuroscientific and clinical research into the effects of psychoactive substances on the brain and cognition, and investigates new avenues of treatment for mental and physical conditions, as well as the enhancement of creativity and well-being.
So the main gist of her foundation is not to promote trepanation, but other
well-being, I think.
Sources of well-being. Okay.
Yeah.
Consciousness, enlightenment, trying to understand the effects of drugs.
Yeah.
Other substances.
Well, I think it comes out of that history of trepanation being used by people who were experimenting with hallucinatory drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's, even to today, is still kind of a part of it.
You take enough LSD and you just want to open it up.
Yeah. Just check it out.
Pop it open.
Yeah. Take it out, toss it around, put it back. Hopefully.
So she was together with a guy named Joseph Mellon.
Yep.
I don't think they ever got married, but they had kids together. They were together for 40 years or something. But Joseph Mellon was the second guy after Bart Hughes to self-trepan. He ran into Bart pretty soon after he did it, looking for acid. I guess he was he was out looking for acid and ran into Bart. They ended up becoming friends and
obviously
believed very much in what he did. He did it to himself. So in this whole culture, he's the second guy to have ever self-inflicted and she was so impressed with the effects that it had on him that she decided to be the third.
There's nothing like being the third.
She's the third. Oh,
she's the third one. Yeah.
Okay.
Not
in this culture.
In this culture, yeah.
So the idea is that Bart was the first person in 100 years or more to do it.
In Western society.
Yeah, since modern medicine showed up.
Well, and that's something I think we should say too, that trepanning was, up until the early 1900s, widely accepted. It wasn't a fringe thing. It wasn't like, oh, it's some tribal. It wasn't really until brain surgery itself and anesthesia, put people down, conduct brain surgery, lobotomies. I mean, those things replaced trepanning. This was something that was a part of, well into society that was still kind of within reach of our own today, in Western culture.
The other important difference here too is that he had no interest in it other than its effects physiologically. He had no interest in it as a medical procedure.
Right.
It was to correct a deficit in evolution's pattern. So it was to only make him feel better, not to alleviate a symptom or because he had gotten in an accident or something and needed to do this. He was the one to have since considered the fact that it might actually be better for you just to have it done.
Yes, this was an otherwise healthy person trying to make himself even better. This also ties into, I think, the reason that I had never heard of this until you mentioned it. And
wow. Just a week ago.
Just a week ago. My life has changed.
Big time.
Big time.
I'm going to go down to Mexico.
I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to Monterey.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
I'm saving up.
Fundamentals, going on a little vacation.
Yeah.
No. Man, that'd be so great. So we're taking donations. We're going to need...
Oh, I'll do it.
Yeah, I will
I'll do it.
We're going to need about $9,600. We're all getting trepanned.
Kickstarter.
I think part of the reason why it is shocking and surprising, but I think the reason it is because, the quote unquote modern medicine or society viewed this practice as something from the ancient world, something that wasn't up to the same standards as the quote unquote modern medicine at the time. So it was totally swept under the rug and it was washed over by lobotomies and
shock therapy.
Yeah. When you're getting pushed aside by lobotomies and shock therapy,
wow,
that's tough. But it was a widely accepted and practiced thing.
As an artist, Amanda did a pretty cool thing. She made a cult art film called Heartbeat in the Brain, which I was unable to find, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I've seen some clips from it. And it is a home video of her performing the operation on herself.
Holy shit.
And this is one of the reasons why she gained a whole lot of notoriety for them. Because
Yeah, those are the stills that I saw in Spin Magazine, and they're readily available. They're right here on
I saw like little
Wikipedia.
clips of it. So Bart filmed his,
Yeah.
but didn't release it as a movie and put it out into like the art world. And that was her whole sort of claim to fame.
She
Was that
released
she
it,
had a
showed it in a
big
gallery.
public to show it. Yeah, she made an art film.
People
out of it.
fainted.
No kidding.
So there is a documentary called Hole in the Head.
Yeah, that is on YouTube.
Yeah, that you can find, and there are 2 trepannings done in that. So if you can stomach it, I thought that was a really great documentary because it wasn't entirely about this new age culture. It's the first half hour is a really, really good dive into the history of it from the beginning, all the archaeological evidence. There is the video in there of a tribal culture performing one. And then you get to see, I'm pretty sure it was Bart who did it. You get to see him do his.
It's 50 minutes, this documentary. It is on YouTube. And that was Bart. I've seen so many people poking holes in their heads in the last week. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, I think of them all now as like close friends. I see
Yeah.
their faces
yes.
and
Spent a
such
lot
nice
of time
people.
with them. Yes. Wow.
Let's see. Peter Halverson, the guy who runs the current organization, he has a pretty interesting connection with Bill Clinton.
whoa, I didn't get that.
He taught Bill Clinton international relations when he was at Oxford.
Whoa.
Then later on went to Trepann himself.
So, should we talk more about Amanda Fielding? Or
No, so I had that wrong. I'm sorry. I got it. It was actually Joey Mellon.
okay.
Yeah, I thought that seemed weird, but Google was a little weird. So Amanda Fielding's lover taught Bill Clinton international
Joey
relations.
Mellon. Okay.
Yeah. You can edit that out, right?
Sure.
I don't ever want to be wrong.
No, I think that people need to know.
You'd have to say it all over again if you wanted it to be.
No, I'll just let my ignorance.
We're not perfect here, guys.
There we go.
So we get the actual practice of this in the modern day film playing here in the Fundamentals studio.
Where is this?
This is in Africa.
And so this is them preparing to do one. They're spending all day. The medicine man is getting everything ready to do a trepanning on a woman. I forget why she was getting it done. Do you remember?
I think it might have just been
Things are about to get tough.
like headaches. Yeah, things are about to get.
Yeah, I totally missed why they were performing it.
It doesn't matter.
No.
They're gonna do it.
And there she goes. Cut right on open. There's just the calm. Like she is not under an anesthetic
Oh, and
right here.
they are in there.
Really
Yeah.
digging in.
Yeah, they don't care.
Oh, that's not.
Yeah,
That's
they don't care. No, and then you're gonna see a little bit of.
They're all poking
Yeah, they're scraping
inside
away
of her head with
some
their
of the
fingers.
They're scraping away some of the material away from the scalp,
Hey, you gotta get the goop out of there.
and then better wash it. Oh, sharpen this up a little bit.
Yeah, the pouring the water over it really gets me here.
Oh gosh.
This is where I was going.
Yeah, it's like I said, I've been really desensitized to gore, but it's not the
Literally,
gore here that
that's,
bothers me. It's the
Picking it out with their fingers.
Just picking at it. It's like picking out a pomegranate
Man.
it's just I can't help but imagine this happening to me and
It's like peeling
and
an
being
orange.
okay.
and not under any kind
And
of
now that this is scrubbing
Oh,
it,
gosh.
just
yeah, see
scrubbing
that?
They,
like
do they
scrubbing
stitch
her
it back
brain.
up?
No. What would they stitch that with?
They leave that
Dave, look around. Look at what.
the one bit. So I watched a bit of Hole in the Head, and the one guy's talking about how he makes basically a cross incision and just peels it back. But this is
front to
Yeah,
back.
I
to
think
back.
that's the smart way to do it.
yeah.
You
So
know.
they bound her head. This is right after she's just walking around. They bind her head in banana leaves.
Oh, cool. Because
Yeah. So now these are people that have had it done. That's just like the membrane and over the skull that's healed. Like the skin is still apart.
Yeah.
oh, it's like bread.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is like a.
That is a reverse
It's
mohawk.
like a dinner roll.
It's the inverted mohawk.
Cleaning it
it's-
with a banana leaf.
Liberty spikes straight into your brain.
Woo. Wow.
That guy's got a couple done.
Yeah, so he's had a few done.
They did it and did it again?
Some people have. I mean, there'd be people with 4, 5, 6, 7.
I liked this guy a lot.
This guy's great.
So
He reminded me of the doctor from 30 Rock. Never funny.
Dr. Spaceman.
Oh,
Jimin.
Spachimin.
Yeah.
That's wow.
So which video is this that people can
This
find?
is a hole in the
A hole
head.
in the head.
Okay.
That's from A Hole in the Head.
It's on YouTube. It is pretty graphic, but I will say, if you are squeamish, you can watch it, and the graphic parts are pretty contained.
Yeah.
So
You know when to look away.
and even if you're just listening to it, you'll know like what you would be seeing. I think the calm and the acceptance and willingness to have this done to you is almost more shocking, because it's not violent.
No. And
It's not like a violent act.
that's what was so weird for me is I went into it expecting to be fine. Like, gore was not going to be an issue at all. But if the serenity of it was just really...
I've been so
It just gives
nervous
me
to get the
goosebumps.
dentist, and then the idea that I'm going to go to the dentist, and instead of using a drill on my teeth, he's going to take like an old tin can and carve back my scalp and remove some of my skull. And I'm nervous at the dentist?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That woman is tougher than anyone will ever meet.
Or is just like operating already on a level of enlightenment that why you don't need the trepanning. If you're calm and together enough to have someone scrape back your scalp and put a hole in your skull, I mean, what? You don't need to meditate. You don't need any. I mean, you're probably fine.
Got to connect to last week here for a second.
Yeah.
John Lennon really wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
Huh.
Paul McCartney talked him out of it.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
What year was that, roughly?
1986 is when Paul McCartney talked about it. But I don't have when.
Weird.
This would have been late 60s probably. When
Probably right after he stopped
Came back
taking
from
out
India.
he came across.
Stopped taking out with Mahesh.
No,
And it's like,
Mahesh.
well, if that guy can't tell me what's good, I should just cut a hole in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that how connected those movements are. Similar ends.
Last week we
Similar
did
goal in mind.
transcendental meditation.
Okay.
I should say that.
Yeah.
Well, and that I have to say, a lot of our podcasts have connected in a lot of ways, and I don't know if it's because
Never intentionally, because I never knew what it was about.
right, and that's the whole idea is we're choosing subjects that we've heard of, like nothing that any one of us here would say. I know a lot.
Yeah.
I know a lot about this already.
It's not like we're like, okay, you know something about this. You educate us.
Yeah.
Let's find something that we can educate
In
ourselves.
case you guys didn't pick up on that, 10 episodes in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this has been our theme.
We don't
That's
know
what
anything.
we're doing. In case you didn't
Yeah,
realize.
we don't know what we're talking about. No, but
No, it's really
great.
coincidental.
And I think it's really great that it either speaks to we are subconsciously or maybe unconsciously drawn to certain types of subjects, or there is a pretty nice web in between all these things. Because I can't think of an episode that we didn't reference another episode.
I can't either.
Subject. And the subject, I mean, we've gone from the circus, I mean, Cheers, Carl Tanzler. How have we not talked about Carl Tanzler in relation to this? But we've talked about...
It definitely crossed my mind.
He looks like what I expected Bart Hughes to look like.
Actually, any sort of scientist,
Yeah.
Carl Tanzler looks like he's Central Casting's dream.
Any mad scientist.
I had way more problems with him than this.
Yeah, that was pretty
Brutal.
pretty sick.
I will say you've gotten into the most gruesome stuff every time. Did
Yeah.
fire and you found people who had been burned.
I know.
Oh yeah, you did the.
This
More
guy's a
upsetting.
sick, twisted human being.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it, guys. It's just
I'm just
I
curious.
just have to. It's a
it's upsetting.
compulsion.
I need to save the world. Okay.
That's where you go.
Yeah. By
Oh
putting-
boy. Yeah.
yeah.
Carl
No,
Tanzler. Wow. We'll save that.
Save that. That's a
oh
little.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put that away for later.
You want to
Yeah.
talk about romance.
Wow.
He's a real sweetheart.
So this is still going on.
It's actually gaining more steam now than it ever has with that movement. So
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
for up until today in discovering their organization, I was under the impression that they had pretty much given up trying to find surgeons.
Yeah.
But it turns out Mexico is where they finally went to get surgeons to do it. Like I said before, I think it should be absolutely okay to get done because I believe that you should be able to do just about whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Sounds
Yeah.
like it's no worse than a tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. I just think about it as body modification, whether or not it works. And they're just trying to get enough evidence that there's something positive about it to get it into being an accepted thing plastic surgery wise. But you don't have to explain to somebody why, firming up the body is a positive thing to do, but it's an absolutely superfluous and unnecessary thing to put your body under.
Yeah.
But you can do that, but you can't just remove a little. And the holes really aren't that big, and especially when you...
Yeah.
I was going to ask
Let's
I feel like
that.
they
don't have to be big at all. And the idea is you only need one. More doesn't do anything. We talked about there is evidence of a lot of them being done, but that was...
And gaping holes being...
Very superstitious idea of it then. Now, in order to increase the brain blood volume, you need hardly any of a hole at all, because as soon as the pressure is released, it doesn't matter how big it is or how many.
So what happens post-procedure, aside from the hole itself, like your skin goes back over it, hair not grow over that part?
It will. They peel the scalp back and put the scalp.
Yeah, typically they make like the cross incision and open that up and lay that back and then work on the skull and then stitch that back.
I didn't see Amanda. She still had hair. All the guys are bald, though, but I think it's because it's a point of pride for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were like older. Like Bart was well older by the time I think he was already balding. But I think it might be just like a point of honor. They're so into it.
Or they just went bald.
Or they might have just went bald.
Yeah, I watched a Hole in the Head briefly, and one guy was bald, and another couple just had their hair, and they were just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. When
Is it this guy? So he's got hair up here.
Yeah, there was a different guy.
But you can still clearly see...
You see the hole in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so happy, too. That's Bart.
He's pumped.
Bart's was right below his hairline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Amanda, I love that we're on first name basis with Amanda.
I feel really close to all these people.
Comfortable with that.
It's such a small community. I just
calling him Bart the whole show.
Yeah.
I just jumped right
Amanda
in.
And Bart.
Dr. Hughes.
Yeah, none of that.
No, Bart.
When Amanda in the video that the movie that she made about herself trepanning herself, she starts with like cutting back her hair, and I think kind of, if not shaving it back, but like really getting up pretty high into the hairline. So once her hair grows back in, you would never notice it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something else too. Like you would never know just looking at her if she didn't say like, yeah, I put a hole in my head, that there was anything going on with her physically. She was talking about pigeons.
You know what I liked reading about how Joey Mellon had several botched attempts before he finally got it done.
Don't mess it up.
That was the second guy. Yep. One time he went to the hospital. He messed it up so bad.
And they said stop.
But yeah, he was interesting because...
Don't do that, man.
He actually, for his first attempt, had purchased like a medieval trepanning tool. Yeah. The iconic one you see in the paintings, kind of like a corkscrew with a C in the middle, so that way you can just do this kind of thing. Looks like you're making bread. But yeah, he wanted to do it. He wanted to do it to himself the old-fashioned way, and that it didn't work. So he's sitting there with a incision in his head, just digging and digging and digging. Nothing's happening. And he finally decides to do it again. Cuts himself open. Too bad he has to go to the hospital. And finally, a third time, he just took a power drill. So happy about it.
Yeah.
Really, really happy.
There's also that scene in Pi.
Yeah.
But he actually goes for the
temple kind of...
Yeah, the vein in his temple, but it's the same...
Relieving pressure.
That movie is so strange.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
There's a description from Joey Mellon. He wrote a book called Borehole. After some time, there was an ominous-sounding schlop and the sound of bubbling. I drew the trepan out, and the gurgling continued. It sounded like air bubbles running under the skull as they were pressed out.
Oh my God.
I looked at the trepan, and there was a bit of bone in it. At last.
Bingo.
On closer inspection, I saw that the disc of bone was much deeper on one side than on the other.
Oops.
Obviously, the trepan had not been straight and had gone through at one point only, and the piece of bone had snapped off and come out. I was reluctant to start drilling again for fear of damaging the brain membranes with the deeper part while I was cutting through the rest, breaking off of a splinter. If only I had an electric drill, it would have come out so much simpler. Amanda was sure I was through. There seemed no other explanation for the schlooping noises, and I decided to call it a day. At the time, I thought that any hole would do, no matter what size. I bandaged up my head and cleared away the mess.
Any hole will do ya.
Yeah, he did it again.
So he came back and cleaned up the hole.
with the electric drill.
Yeah, then he came back with an electric drill. Because he wasn't sure if his feeling of well-being afterwards was due to the trepanning or due to the fact that, like, finally breaking through a little bit and kind of that stress relief, which is understandable, Joey.
Got to make sure.
Yeah, but these people are thorough.
They're game for it.
It's kind of interesting to me. I at least didn't come across any deaths or damages done by these non-professional surgeons or just lay people performing this on themselves. There was no, it might be in there, they might have done a really good job of hiding it, but you think that would have come up kind of in the news, especially as you dig into their culture, that one of them, went too far.
I wonder if there's some sort of animal instinct.
It stops you.
It stops you. There's some, trigger that your subconscious is sending to your nerve endings. Bad touch, bad touch, bad touch. And then it will back it off.
It's hard to imagine.
It's hard to imagine doing that to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's the thing, the fella who had his arm trapped in the canyon in Utah.
Oh,
Yeah.
He said
127 hours guy?
Right.
Yeah.
He said he had to overcome it's your impulse not to harm yourself.
Yeah.
And he had to overcome that
Yeah.
to survive.
Yeah.
So he had to
I feel like that's different than
break his will.
putting a hole
That's
in your head,
different.
though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it's not a survival situation.
It's self-harm.
This is just for fun.
This is for self-betterment. This is for
Self-betterment,
or supposedly.
Well, the only instance that I'd really heard of taking out a piece of your skull is for last-ditch effort emergency situations where you have to relieve, like, brain swelling or something
Yeah,
like that.
where they
Swell in the brain.
And I had seen...
Yeah, they still do it. And
do
Yeah.
that, and I guess they put it back now.
Yeah.
I would imagine
it
so.
relieves pressure and you can put it back.
And that's the thing is that they...
In the case of a brain injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Head trauma that's so severe, the swelling.
And I had seen, the old... It looked medieval to me, but I didn't really know what that was. But I thought that was far in the past. Not something that anybody would even consider at this point.
No, it's just the setting has changed, but it's the same thing, yeah.
There's a really interesting thing that happened with the archaeological evidence in the late 1600s, early 1700s. When they first found the trepanning, it was a widely held belief then that all non-white civilizations were vastly less intelligent than all Western civilizations, white civilizations. And the evidence for trepanning was what changed that mode of thinking. That was kind of an interesting point, is they realized that they had to have been fairly intelligent and competent in order to do this kind of surgery with such a high success rate and
Not just destroy their own
yeah.
society. Who's left? Who's next?
So that's what kind of began that acceptance and the end of the egoism of it all. Interesting little point. It was kind of a sidetrack, but I thought that's side of history.
Yeah, for sure. So how the hell do we wrap this up?
I don't know.
I think you just leave it open.
I think you leave it open. Like a
I brought a drill.
Big old
Dave's ready to party.
We're gonna have it live in the studio, trepanning.
What does that sound like? That
A schlurp, apparently.
there is a slurp. Yeah, the gases.
Tell you what, I trust you guys.
Yeah, thanks. You just met.
Your human instinct.
Yeah, did not. But bam.
Yeah, drilling bone. Oh, I can't.
Oh no.
Especially your own bone.
I expected to be more against and disgusted by this. I can't imagine doing it to myself.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone else doing it to me, honestly.
Yeah.
The idea is intriguing.
Yeah, and if people do find
If it doesn't, the idea that it doesn't, having a hole in your head,
a small
hole in your head, you can lead a normal life, and it doesn't really harm you.
Yeah, but even if it's a placebo
But who wants to do that
effect,
to themselves?
Yeah.
I'm awfully excited to see what they do discover now that it is slowly becoming open and they have real surgeons doing this in a totally safe manner to volunteers and ways to study the effects and not just the anecdotal evidence of a bunch of people who
are
obviously
already signed up.
and you're going to be a little biased to the idea that you're now listening to a guy who cut his head open and took a piece of bone out so he could be like a kid again. At that point, you already kind of have an attitude towards his belief system. So I'm kind of excited to see where it goes in the future now. you know,
Yeah.
because who knows? It might, in a decade or something with research,
It
turns
might
out,
really catch on.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best thing anybody can do for themselves.
Yeah.
Cures dementia or something. Who knows?
I'm surprised, knowing what I know of myself, that I'm not more like, this is messed up. It's really,
I think I'm
I
kind
don't
of
know.
with you.
it kind of, it's unusual,
Yeah.
I'd say. I mean, it's outside my life, my understanding of the world, but
Right.
yeah, you're talking about like subdermal implants or body modification. This is not that hard to wrap my
True.
mind around. I think really it's like the videos that are online are pretty
Yeah, I didn't
shocking.
like watching it
Yeah.
happen.
But it's also, it's not like it's you know, there were shows about plastic surgery on TV that show, I mean, that show a surgeon
Just as invasive when you think
Just-
about it.
kind
At least to
yeah.
your, well, I
The thing is, like, they're knocked out.
they're knocked out.
Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
don't have this idea of
But-
exactly what it
but-
would be feeling like.
But when the brain surgery is being performed, the patient is kept awake so that they can respond. So that even that is not that unusual in dealing with like a head.
Yeah, like a
trauma.
local anesthetic, though, don't you?
Yeah, that was what it-
Because that's like when Bart does his, he takes away all the feeling.
yeah, and then you can operate.
But I mean, I'm just watching it happen, so I imagine what it feels like. But I think
It's
there's
really-
something about him calmly doing it, sitting there, like being
Yeah.
in control, where you watch somebody undergo surgery and it's really a detached experience. They're all covered up. Everybody's all
yeah, and this is, I don't know, some
really
of
practical way of going about it.
some of those videos, it's just putting the sound of a dental drill like in my soul. It's just killing me, just giving me the creeps. And
I did have a really good time with this subject and a really good time this week, but especially like the culture, like learning that there's a whole culture of people. It wasn't just
Yeah.
the procedure
And
or
it wasn't in
the
just
history was
one
interesting
region.
enough
It
too.
was
No, but
all over.
it's happening right now. There are people who are trying to get this to become
Yeah.
a mainstream thing.
the oldest surgical procedure in human history.
I'll tell you
which
what, though,
you've
I'm-
never heard of.
I'm glad it's over. Just put the head down, get through it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now it's over. So next week we're going to be learning about something pleasant like gardening or cookies.
I hope
Oh yeah.
so. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Dave, our guest.
Yeah.
Thanks for
been a
having me.
pleasure.
It's great.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. I'm Martin Wallace.
I'm Darren McCarthy,
And I'm Dan Fury.
and this has been The Fundamentals.
So, now that we've had our drains brilled, nope.
Okay.
Exactly. I can't even.
Podcast over.
We just did the drilling.
We're never doing another podcast because
Because we had our drains brilled.
we had our drains drilled.